Welcome to this meeting of the Babergh Planning Committee. I will now ask the Governance Officer to read out the domestic arrangements and the fire regulations. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you're attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptop is also switched to silent. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately by a fire exit, which is over towards the room entrance. Make your way to the assembly point, which is Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exits. Do not enter the atrium and do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Some introductions. You've just met Claire Philpott, our Governance Officer. Present is our Chief Planning Officer, Phil Isbell. Our legal advisor today is Ian Dupre, and the case officer for the first case is Sam Summers. Are we happy if I move on with the agenda? Okay. Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Jessie Carter.
Thank you. To receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other registrable and non-registrable interests by members. Are there any to declare?
May I, Chairman?
Yep.
Just, can I be heard? We may not need to minute this, but I'm just going to say, I think, because it's both items we have today are contentious matters, obviously, but with reference to the Brett Vale application, Councillor Carruthers, Jane Carruthers, has quite properly discussed with me and governance officers the fact that Dedham Vale, Stour Valley National Landscape Partnership have made comments on it, which are reported to you, and Councillor Carruthers is on the board, the committee of that body, I believe appointed by this council, yes. Now that is an other registrable interest, an ORI under the code, but I have, without going into a lot of detail, I've had a discussion with Councillor Carruthers and I have advised her that in these circumstances, it's not a situation where the code would require her to speak because she's allowed to, but then leave the room. And Councillor Carruthers has confirmed that she had no personal part in deciding what that recommendation that you see in your paper, how it was made, and that it wasn't discussed at any meeting that she's been present at. So in those circumstances, because it's a contentious matter, I thought it was appropriate we say something. I'll discuss with Mrs. Philpott whether we put it in the minutes. We may or may not need to, but for what it's worth, there it is.
No. All right. Declarations of lobbying. Are there any to declare? No. Declarations of personal site visits. Are there any to declare? No. Thank you. Moving on. BPL 2311, confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on November the 29th. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of these minutes? No? In that case, could I have a proposer to accept the minutes? Councillor Beer, seconder, Councillor Osborne. Electronic vote?
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer. Thank you. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 6 votes for and 4 abstentions. That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sign this in a moment. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Site inspections.
None requested, Chair.
None requested. Okay. In that case, we'll move on to the schedule of planning applications. The first one is DC 23 00740, the Red Line, the street, East Bergholt, Colchester, Essex. I will now invite the case officer, Samantha Summers, to introduce the application to the committee. All yours, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of a storage building with 2 bed and breakfast rooms above for the Red Lion Public House in East Bergholt. The erection of 4 dwellings and alterations to the public car park and replacement of the public conveniences. This application comes to committee because it is considered to be controversial. The red line shows the extent of the application site and the blue line shows the land which is in the ownership of the applicant. The application site is within the heart of the village of East Bergholt. This area is the historic core of the village with a large amount of listed buildings. The orange buildings are grade 2 listed and includes the Red Lion Public House and its immediate neighbours. And next door to that, this red building here is a grade 2 star listed building, the Gables. This area of East Bergholt is also within the conservation area defined by the purple coloured line. The brown line is the extent of the built-up area boundary. The pink hatched area within the orange line is the application site. Members may wish to note that part of the site is within the conservation area and the built-up area boundary, but the southern part is in neither. The built-up area boundary actually runs around 3 sides of that southern part of the site, just tucked in here. This building here is a BT building, and this area of land here is the village cemetery. We have the Congregational Church just here. That building is considered to be a non-designated heritage asset. This application is a resubmission of a previous one that came to committee for decision on the 25th of January this year. Members of the committee voted to refuse the application on officer recommendation. That refusal is now being appealed with the Planning Inspectorate, and a decision is due imminently. The scheme was the same as today's application, with the exception of the number of dwellings and private parking for the dwellings. The previous application sought 5 dwellings within the pub garden. The parking was positioned in an area which would impact the size and shape of the public car park for East Bergholt. The public car park, although owned by the applicant, has been on a long-term lease to the parish council. The parish council has listed the car park as an asset of community value. The car park is protected by policy EB11 of the neighbourhood plan and also policy LP28 of the JLP. The plan accompanied the application for the asset of community value and was subject to consultation with the applicant at that time. This is also the area within the lease agreement with the parish council. In order to be able to build the proposed 5 dwellings and to have the private parking that would be associated with them in the beer garden here, That would be the private parking with the previous application. This area that is shown as a wedge, which is currently part of the public car park, would actually become part of the area for the private housing. That was considered to be contrary to policy EB 11 of the neighbourhood plan, and therefore that was the reason for refusal of the application. This is the current layout of the site. The Red Lion pub and outbuilding, which is used as a shop, is positioned here. That's the Red Lion pub just there. And you have the gardens to the public house just here. Red Lion Cottage is located just here. That is actually in a separate ownership. This is the public car park area, and the public convenience building is just here. The public car park is accessed from the main street, and this also provides an access through here to the BT building, and also an access point to the cemetery in this corner of the site here. The car park currently has 32 bays marked out for cars and 2 coach bays. The coach bays are positioned in front of the public conveniences just here. The beer garden sits between the car park and the Congregational Church. The Congregational Church is positioned here. This is the pub car park. Although this area is a pleasant green space, it has no specific land designation, such as a visually important space, or is listed in the neighbourhood plan as a green space. This part of the site is not within the conservation area or the built-up area boundary. There are 3 separate elements to this application, but are all linked by this car parking area here. The first element is the erection of a storage building within the grounds of the public house with 2 bed and breakfast rooms above. And that is located in this area here. 2 additional parking spaces are included just outside that building, which are not currently there, so they would be specifically for this building. The second element is the erection of the 4 dwellings in the southern part of the site with associated car parking. They're positioned just here within the pub garden. The third element is the demolition of the public conveniences and the erection of new public conveniences along with changes to the layout of the car park. So currently the public convenience building is here, and it's proposed to move it just up into this corner here. Firstly, we'll look at the storage building with the bed and breakfast rooms above. The building would be on the site of where there is currently, a shipping container which is used for storage in the car parking and delivery area of the public house just here. The building is proposed to remove that storage container and put it in a permanent building. This is the storage building with the 2 bed and breakfast rooms above. Much negotiation has taken place between the architects, planners and our heritage team, as well as Historic England, on the design and location of the building. During the course of the previous application and pre-application, prior to the submission of this application, that is when the negotiations have taken place. Nothing has changed since the previous application came forward. The design and scale of all of the proposed buildings were very important considerations because of the sensitivities around the heritage assets, being the conservation area, listed buildings, and the non-designated heritage assets. The building has been carefully designed to look like a traditional outbuilding that would be timber clad with clay pantile roof. The height of the building has been kept to the same level as the existing outbuildings, and windows have been purposely kept to a minimum and as small. The building is important to the viability of the public house and would provide essential storage space to the ground floor and visitor accommodation to the first floor. 2 bedrooms would be provided with a double bed and ensuite to each room. Concerns have been raised about overlooking of the private amenity space of Red Lion Cottage. However, the windows that look out in that direction is a high level window and is unlikely to cause an overlooking issue unless guests can actually stand on the bed to look out of the window. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I'll get a bit closer. Both Historic England and the Heritage team are content with the design, with the scale and the materials of the building, and do not consider that it would harm any of the heritage assets. The 2 car parking spaces would not impact the current parking to the public car park, as these would be additional car parking spaces. It is understood that the Parish Council wish to further promote the village as a centre for the life and work of John Constable. This building would provide important visitor accommodation in the heart of the village. It is likely that visitors will spend money within the village, which in turn will help existing businesses. This is the access to the public car park. In the foreground is the Red Lion Cottage with its outbuilding, which is that creamy sort of coloured building just there. Both Red Lion Cottage and the Red Lion Public House are Grade 2 listed, and this part of the site is within the conservation area and built-up area boundary. The Gables, which is Grade 2 star listed, is set behind the brick wall on the corner here. This is taken from the car park and shows the location for the storage building, which would be next door to the current shop building and behind the garage building for Red Lion Cottage, so in this area just here. Taking a few steps back into the car park, the proposed building would be sited in this location, just here. The dominant structure would remain the Red Lion, which is the tallest building in the area, which is here. The ridge height of the proposed building would be much lower than the existing public house. This is the area that would form the 2 additional parking spaces, one each side of the birch tree. There would be a loss of some of the shrubs within the bed. Showing the access point with the street, with the Red Lion complex on the right-hand side of the photo, and shows the differing roof levels around this area of the site. This is an artist's impression of how the proposed building would sit in context with the surrounding buildings. This element is considered acceptable as it would support an existing business and provide security for the jobs within the public house. It also provides important tourist accommodation. So you can just see the new storage building with letting rooms above, just in this area here. The second element to the application is the erection of the 4 dwellings and the associated private car parking for them. They're located just here in the pub garden. At the moment, the site is laid to grass with some tree planting. The 4 dwellings would be split into 2 sections, 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings. All 4 dwellings would have 2 bedrooms. 8 parking spaces are provided, and that equates to 2 for each dwelling, which is compliant with current parking standards. There would be a brick wall between the existing public car park and the private parking area to define what is private and what is public parking. There would be an in and out arrangement for vehicles moving in and out of the access, just here where the current public convenience buildings are, and just here near the cemetery, so that vehicles can manoeuvre easily. The development of this part of site would result in the loss of some trees, but more trees are actually proposed than are being taken out. A brick wall is also proposed along the boundary with the rest of the beer garden to provide security, but also some sound attenuation. The area of this part of the site is actually outside of the conservation area and also outside of the built-up area boundary. The proposed dwellings are considered to be of a very high standard in terms of their design and the materials that are proposed for use. They are very traditional in their design, which is acceptable in this sensitive location within the setting of the conservation area and within the setting of the listed buildings and non-designated heritage assets. All 4 dwellings have 2 bedrooms and would be compliant with building regs part M43, which is for wheelchair users. This is an elevational drawing of the brick wall, which divides the car parking zones and the beer garden from the proposed residential development. Again, it's very traditional in its design and the materials used. English garden wall bond would be used to make an attractive and traditional enclosure for the site. These cross-sections show the proposed heights of the storage buildings and dwellings compared to the existing buildings on the site or near to the site. The top section shows the Red Lion and Red Lion Cottage, along with the outbuilding. The proposed storage building is shown with the dotted line. Further along, you have the outline of the Congregational Church with the dwellings. The proposed buildings are subservient in scale to the existing and are acceptable in heritage terms. Moving on to some photographs. This is the front of the Red Lion with the beer garden that you can see just through the gate there. Just at the rear there would be where the dwellings are proposed. This is looking at the side of the Red Lion, and the old manse is on the right-hand side. Just out of shot to the left is the Co-op store, which also hosts the post office. This is the front of the Congregational Church. The proposed dwellings would sit behind the church. There is a burial area in this area just here. This is the back section of the church. Behind the church is the grassed area which forms the informal parking for the church, and behind this hedge line is where the dwellings would be positioned. This photo shows the entrance gates to the cemetery taken from the cemetery grounds. The public car park with public conveniences are located just here. The Red Lion is just at the back here, and this is the grassed area where the dwellings would be positioned. Moving up the cemetery road, you can see the BT building that sits outside the application site, just on the left of the photograph here. The Red Lion is the white building in the background, and the proposed dwellings would be in this location here. This is the site for the 4 dwellings. The pair of semi-detached dwellings would be positioned along here and along here. You can just see the corner of the church, the Congregational Church, in this location here. Again, a photograph of the Congregational Church, and just showing the area in context with the surrounding buildings. Again, just another view of that area. And looking back, this shows the public house here and its beer garden, and the dwellings would be positioned here. This one shows the back of the existing outbuilding that's used as a shop, and it also shows that the pub would still have significant grounds to be used as a beer garden. As already mentioned, most of the application site is within the built-up area of East Bergholt. However, the section where the dwellings are proposed is outside of the built-up area. Therefore, this area is classed as countryside in the JLP. The site is considered to be well located to the existing settlement with the built-up area boundary on 3 sides of it, and it's just tucked in this tiny little corner just here. Policy SPO3 of the JLP directs all new development sites within settlement boundaries unless they fall within the criteria listed in Table 5 of the supporting text to the policy. New dwellings are not listed in Table 5. However, the policies make some exceptions for new dwellings in the countryside. One of the exceptions is that they are in accordance with policies in a made neighbourhood plan. Policy SPO1, getting my words wrong, requires that new housing development should meet an identified need. This is explained in your table papers. East Bergholt has been subject of 3 applications in recent years for larger housing developments. All these sites are the subject of extant planning permissions and are anticipated to be built out in the near future. The red star shows the Red Lion site. The yellow stars are the 3 extant permission sites. There is the site close to the Red Lion, just here, which was a development for 10 dwellings for strictly over 55s. That has now been built out. To the north is Moores Lane, just here. This comprises 144 dwellings and some business units. And to the east of the site is the Heath Road development. Sorry, I'm trying to get my pointer to go where it needs to go. This one here. That development is for 75 dwellings, along with a shop, swimming pool, preschool. It is unlikely that under policy SPO3, under SPO3, under SPO1, we talk about housing needs and the number of dwellings that are required within Babergh for the plan period. There was a housing needs assessment that accompanied the application. That was actually inconclusive as to whether a need in East Bergholt was actually met by these 4 dwellings that are proposed. Therefore, we move on to the neighbourhood plan and also for district-wide need to see what their requirements are. There is a need, both in East Bergholt and district-wide, for smaller 2-bedroom properties and also housing for older people. The adopted East Bergholt Neighbourhood Plan is a much more detailed document that has policies detailing the type and location of where new housing development should be located within the village. It is already accepted that the design, scale and materials are acceptable in terms of harm to the heritage and landscape assets. Policy EB2 of the neighbourhood plan seeks to have new development within 800 metres of the village heart. The policy also puts a limit of 15 dwellings on proposed developments. This plan shows the extent of the village heart that's included within the neighbourhood plan, marked out in blue. The yellow star shows the application site within the village heart. The scheme is for 4 dwellings, so less than the specified 15 dwellings within the neighbourhood plan. Policy EB3 requires that small-scale development does not harm the character and appearance of the conservation area, nor adversely affects the setting of the heritage assets. Development should reflect the traditional scale, form, massing and siting of buildings in the area. The applicant has worked closely with both Historic England and the heritage team in-house to design something appropriate to the setting. They have found no harm. Policy EB4 of the neighbourhood plan seeks specific details in terms of housing type, tenure and mix. The policy specifies that at least 40% of new dwellings should be 1 and 2 bedroomed houses. This scheme is 100% 2 bedroom properties. Policy EB5 states that up to 1/3 of new dwellings should meet the need of older people and should be within 400 metres of the parish church of St Mary. This area, this plan actually shows that area with the orange circle. The yellow star shows the site in question, which is well within that 400-metre buffer zone. All of the dwellings would be compliant with building regs for wheelchair user homes. These dwellings are considered appropriate for older people that may wish to downsize but stay in the village without compromising the quality of the homes that they move to. All facilities within the village heart would be easily accessible by foot or by motability scooter. When the JLP and neighbourhood plan are read together, the departure from that policy of SPO1 about an identified need is considered to be acceptable because of the district-wide need and also the need that is identified within the neighbourhood plan. Moving on to the final element of the application and the part that links everything together, this part of the presentation covers the car park. It is proposed to demolish the existing public conveniences. They are currently housed in this rather unattractive and uninviting building. The building does nothing in terms of enhancing the conservation area. The brick type is a completely different colour to what is used around the area, which is mainly red brick, and also the roof tiles. It is proposed to replace the building with this much smaller and more sympathetically designed building in another location on the site. This would result in the loss of 3 cubicles and would only provide 2, 1 for male, 1 for female. Both would be able to be used by wheelchair users. Changes to the layout of the car park are also included in the application. The removal of one of the flower beds and trees that sit within it is proposed. The new WCs would be located up in this corner near the entrance to the BT building. 2 important access points for the BT building and also for the cemetery would remain unobstructed at all times. There are currently 29 standard parking bays and 3 disabled bays with 2 marked coach bays. The application does not seek to lose any standard or disabled bays, but the new layout only includes one coach parking bay. This drawing shows the swept paths for vehicle movements, for larger vehicle movements. So you can see that things like bin trucks would be able to come and empty bins from the dwellings and move around the site sensibly. Concerns have been raised by the parish council that the new layout removes one of the coach parking bays. The architect has provided a drawing showing the swept paths of the coach bays. If two large vehicles are parked together in the marked bays, it would appear that vehicles cannot manoeuvre properly in the site. This drawing has been passed by Highways for consultation, and they agree that it is likely that vehicles would find it difficult to move in that area if both parking bays were filled at the same time. Moving on to photographs of the car park. This photo is taken from the access point to the BT building. This is the raised bed that would be removed in this area here. And this would be the location for the public conveniences. This also shows the Congregational Church in the background here and where the new dwellings would be located. This is looking into the access for the BT building. Again, another view from the BT building access looking back towards the car parking area. This is the wall in the public car park, which is the boundary between the Grade 2 star listed building and the public car park. At the moment, there is informal parking along that area, which would make it extremely difficult for larger vehicles to manoeuvre properly in that area. It is intended that there will be double yellow lines along that area to make sure that informal parking is resisted and that people park in the marked bays. Again, some more photographs of that wall with the gables. Just showing some more photographs of the car parking area. This is the access point to the cemetery, which would be kept clear at all times so that people can access that properly. That's the hatching that is currently there for the cemetery access. New dwellings would be behind this area here, and this is where the brick wall would be built along that boundary. This is from the cemetery, just looking back towards the car parking area. You can see the existing public convenience building in this area. Again, just showing that very long brick wall with the gables. And the access to be kept clear for the BT building. That is the access to the BT building, and that's the building itself. This is the landscape plan for the site. It is proposed to resurface the public car park with a more sensitive material than the existing tarmac. That is considered to be an enhancement to the conservation area. The private parking would be contained behind the brick wall with some planting. That would have a different surface material to help define which is private and which is public car parking. Thank you for listening. I know that was a lot of slides to go through. I try not to make too many, but I think in this case it was quite important for everyone to understand the site. It is a complicated application. There are 3 elements to this application. If members find that one element is not acceptable, then the whole application will be refused. The application has addressed the previous reason for refusal by removing one dwelling so that all of the private housing and parking can be contained within the pub garden. The size and shape of the public car park remains unchanged. The JLP supports businesses and tourist facilities, and therefore the storage building with the letting rooms above and changes to the car park and improvements to the WCs is considered acceptable. The proposed dwellings, although outside of the settlement, do fit the criteria of location and size set out within the neighbourhood plan. Although the housing needs assessment is inconclusive about the need for additional housing in East Bergholt. The type of housing would provide a small-scale development of 2-bedroom properties that have been identified as a district-wide need. Therefore, this application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions required by statutory consultees, and members have a copy of those conditions in a draft decision notice, should they wish to look through for clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Phil.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may, yes, just quickly, we have suggested the language of the draft conditions that are on in your recommendation, in case members do wish to get into fine detailed discussion about the terminology of those. There are obviously a series of conditions recommended. I wouldn't propose that we focus on those. They are, to a large degree, standard conditions from our usual approach. And I would suggest that the issue is the matter that needs interest. But for clarity, Chairman, if members wish to engage in discussion about the conditions themselves, we can go there with that document.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Beer.
Yes, perhaps you could just confirm the toilet block, is that in private ownership? I think you refer to it as public, and if that's public, who will have the ongoing concerns? Will it belong to Babergh, or who's responsible for that afterwards? Thank you.
The public conveniences, I believe, belong to the applicant because it's on his land. However, the parish council have lease of the land, and I believe that they are responsible for cleaning and closing up.
The applicant has the freehold, but there's a lease to the parish council.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. Could you confirm, is there any formal management of the parking of the car park itself? Do we have a facility in there where we manage the actual process of parking, you know, and people park in the wrong place and things like that?
No, it's a free car park, and I don't believe that there are anyone that sort of looks around to make sure people are parking properly.
Thank you. Councillor Grandon.
Oh, it is working now. Thank you. Could I have a look at, I think it was the last slide with the diagram on, please. I think it was it, yes, that's the one, because that seemed very clear and easier to see. Could you kindly, I know you have explained things really well, but this seemed to be quite an easy slide to see everything. Could you please explain what we're seeing here again, please? And also remind me, there were 29 car parking spaces originally. Could you please remind me, in the new application, how many parking spaces there would be in the new car park?
Okay, so if I do the parking one first, so that I remember to do that, there's no loss of car parking, the same amount of spaces. The only thing that is changing is there is a loss of a coach parking bay. Yeah. So just to explain, 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings here and here, and their associated private parking just here. Changes to the layout of this car park, so that big bed just there will be removed. We have the storage building with the letting rooms above, just there within, you know, the immediate surroundings of the Red Lion, and 2 parking spaces provided, extra parking spaces for that building. Was there anything else that you wanted clarity on?
Yes, I've got 2 other parts of the question, if I may, please. Thank you. Where is the new, or where is the pub garden? And so that's one question now, and, or on this plan. And the parish council talks about the car parking spaces being, the new car parking spaces being very small. Is that the case?
Right, so the pub car park, the pub garden is in this area just here. Ooh.
Sorry, where? Oh, right. Yeah.
Just here. So they have a big patio area just here, and then grassed area here.
All that white area?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the car parking has actually been passed by highways. They did not have any comment on that they were irregular sized car parking bays at all. So, yeah, they seem to be fine, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Maybury.
Does work. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Samantha, for this. I've got a few questions, so I'm asking to have a look at a few of the slides, if I may, please. If we go right back, slide 10, you were talking about the windows. If we can have a look at those, because there was a later photograph that showed something different, in my opinion, but if we have a look at that one first, please. It's really annoying.
This is
when
the
you have to
trouble
go
with so
right
many
way
slides.
back. Right, there you go.
Okay.
Right,
So this is the window that would be overlooking the garden of Red Lion Cottage.
right,
And you can see from these floor plans that there is a bed in front of the window, and it is a high-level window.
Right.
It's not one that you would just, rest your hands on and look out. You would literally have to climb onto the bed to look out the window.
thank you. That explains that.
Yeah.
The next slide, slide 11. I may have missed it. I'm sorry, but you do lower your voice, and we all do that, particularly when we're looking
Yeah.
down. And I didn't understand the white building behind the Red Lion Cottage. What is that?
That is in the ownership of Red Lion Cottage, and it's their garage building.
So their garage would be in front of what would
Ye-
be the new outbuilding.
Yeah, so it would sit just behind there.
Okay, so that explains the
I think
next.
there is a shall I bring up the drawing that shows that, the artist's impression?
No, it's fine, because
Okay.
there was a later photograph that showed a window sort of obscured by that building, so I was just trying to work out what that was. Slide 13, you're talking about a shop. Please explain the shop, please.
Yep, so that's this original outbuilding to the public house. I believe it was probably used as storage previously, and then it had a planning permission to be turned into an antique shop.
And is it still used as a shop?
I believe it is still used as a shop, yeah.
Right, okay, fine, thank you. The next one is 17.
Sir, you're shaking your head. Can you confirm whether it's still a shop or not? It's no shop,
Okay.
for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. I am there now. My question about this in and out for the new properties was knowing what public nature is like, they will see an area and they'll park in it. Is that due to be gated, the in and out area?
No, it's not due to be gated, but there is a high brick wall along here.
Right.
The car parking is tucked in here, so I think it does define it quite well and hides it from public view.
Okay, fine, thank you. And my last two questions are just general. You mentioned graveyard and then it went to cemetery. I take it that's an open cemetery? Yes. Currently used?
Yeah, so there's two. There's a burial ground for the Congregational Church, and then there is the open cemetery, which is the main one that this relates to, really, because it's got the access point to the cemetery.
Okay. Now, this may not be in anyone's gift to answer this. The access to that cemetery, how is that defined, i.e., is that always going to be open?
Yes, it will always be open.
And my very last question, you'll be very pleased to hear, is about the proposed 4 dwellings for wheelchair users, which I'm a great believer in. We all need them because sadly things happen in life when we need extra space and perhaps the use of a wheelchair. However, the bedrooms are upstairs. So has there been any provision for a stair lift to be put in permanently to any of this, or what has happened about that, please?
That would fall under building regs. There is a condition, should members be minded to grant permission for this, that would that make sure that they are all wheelchair user dwellings. I'm assuming, I'm not an expert on building regs, but I'm assuming that staircases would make provision for a stair lift to be available should someone want to fit it. I wouldn't imagine that it would be done by the developer at the time, but could be added at a later stage.
Thank you. I can't comment further, but thank you for answering all my questions. Thank you.
Councillor Grandin, you had another question.
Thank you. Can I just have something clarified then? Are these new houses specifically for people who have accessible needs, or are they general accommodation, market accommodation for, but you're assuming they're convenient for older people or people with wheelchair needs? Could you tell me what the position is, please?
Yep, there's no condition to make sure that it is for older people. It will just be open market housing, but built to a standard that an older or wheelchair user could actually live in.
Councillor Register.
It's concerning the car park. You're remarking the car park. The car park will be remarked. Will they be remarked to wider levels than the existing car park, because they look like they were done in the 80s or whatever, and cars are now wider. So even though there's no loss of car parking spaces, are the car parking spaces marked wider than they would have been done in the last century? And the second is, what is the surface of the new surface of the car park both permeable and improves drainage to the car park? Because I remember reading the flood report in the documents, and that seemed important. And also I noted that they rebuilt the car park to improve drainage.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Quite recently, the parish council have actually resurfaced that car park and marked the bays out. So I'm assuming that they would be to current parking standards. This application seeks to resurface the car park with a more sensitive material, softer on the eye, and the bays would be marked out to current parking standards as well. In terms of the flooding, you're quite correct. The Environment Agency mapping does show that there is some surface water issues on the site. A flood risk assessment was carried out and also some modelling for future events. That was all passed by Suffolk County Council Floods team, and they didn't have an issue with it.
Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. It's concerning the coach parking in the car park. I know the parish council have raised issues with the loss of 2 bays to 1 bay. Can you point out on the plan where that is? It looks as though it's at the top. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, so the new coach parking bay would be just in this area here.
Thank you, thank you. And can I ask one other quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Where the residents' car park would be, as you come through the car park, I assume there'll be signage at the entrance there, making it really clear that it's residents only and not to park in front of it. And I can see there's double yellow lines, but I assume there'll be signs where they're saying private or residents only or something.
We don't have that detail as yet. There is a condition for landscaping, which includes signs. So any that come forward in terms of private, we would have control over exactly what they would have, because what we don't want to see is something really unsightly within the conservation area. So that would be passed through our heritage team.
Councillor Brandon, you want another final question?
Please, thank you. If I've understood it correctly, one of the main reasons for refusing the previous application was regarding the car park. Please, could you show us, using the diagrams, what makes this application regarding the car park acceptable compared with the previous one, which was unacceptable? Could you show me why? Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just flick through. So there was only one reason for refusal on the previous application. However, that was assessed against the local plan and the core strategy. So we have reassessed the whole application with the JLP. So CS11 was a nice policy that allowed housing outside of settlement boundaries. The JLP has really tightened up on that. So that's the reason there was one reason for refusal previously, you know. So this area here would be the piece of land that would have been sliced off if it was allowed with the previous application. Because this red line here on the outside is the extent of the public car park. And what had happened is, because there were 5 dwellings which needed 10 parking spaces, they couldn't squeeze it all into the into the beer garden. So what they had to do was push it back into the public car park, and this wedge-shaped piece just here would have been missing from the public car park space. What the neighbourhood plan policy, EB11, seeks to do is to retain all of that car parking area unless it's offset somewhere else within the village heart where further parking could be provided. Bearing in mind this is in the middle of the village, it would be really difficult to actually find somewhere else for extra parking to go that was off-road to account for this loss of land. And that's why it wasn't acceptable previously. So what's happened now is, I don't know, this is the existing car parking line here with this beer garden, and that is all of the new, yeah, there you go. shows it. All of the housing and the parking spaces are tucked into the beer garden and doesn't overspill into the public car park area.
Keeping it very simple, is it because there's been a reduction from 5 to 4 that makes things so much easier?
Correct.
Thank you. I like it simple. Councillor Beer was next.
Following on that frame of making things simple, can you tell me, because we're remodelling the whole car park, is there existing electric charging vehicle facilities there? And if there isn't, would they be able to put them in? I know that may be to the applicant, because while you're digging it up and remodelling it, you could lay the framework there. And also for the for dwellings, can there be electric charging points put in there for them? Because I think that's very valid, particularly if we're thinking that there may be somebody who turns up who's disabled or got a vehicle like that, they would need that facility. Thank you.
I don't believe, and I'm sure Nigel will confirm this one way or the other, I don't believe there are any EV charging points at the moment. Part of the application would require EV parking charging points. That is contained within the conditions of an approval in your list of conditions. So there would be.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit because your voice dropped.
Sorry. Yeah, so in your list of conditions, you'll see that there is a condition for EV parking. Yeah.
Councillor Davis?
Yes, there are gardens for each of the properties at the back of the properties between the boundary and the back of the house.
Okay, and my other question was around housing need. You mentioned that it was inconclusive, but can you just run through what the housing need is for East Bergholt and also how many planning permissions they've got? I went through East Bergholt fairly recently and there's one big new development going up and there's another rather attractive development set back from the road. If you could clarify that, that would be good.
Yes, so there is 3 permissions in place. You're quite right. The attractive one, the smaller one for the over 55s, that's already being built out. There's another one that is being built out at the moment, David Wilson Homes. That is 144 dwellings. And then the one opposite the high school on Heath Road, that is for 75. That currently isn't being built out. They're still waiting to deal with their pre-commencement conditions.
Okay, then a follow-on question would be, what's the housing mix overall for these developments that are underway?
So there is a good mix of everything in there, 1 bedrooms up to 4 bedrooms, lots of affordable housing. So there is a good mix, absolutely. And I think that's why the housing needs assessment was inconclusive. However, when we're talking about SPO1 in the JLP, we're talking about district-wide need. And small schemes like this, the MPPF actually encourages smaller schemes because they come forward more quickly. So the planning permissions for the big ones in East Bergholt, the 144 and the 75, they've taken years to get to where they are already, so they're not actually delivering the houses quickly, even though the planning permissions are in place. And because we have to count the number of houses each year to keep our 5-year land supply, these smaller sites are very helpful in providing extra numbers for us to make sure that we're hitting our targets.
Thank you.
Okay.
No. In that case, thank you, Sam. we're going to have to take a break because apparently a number of the microphones just aren't working, which means nothing can be recorded from the microphones either. So session. Fine. We've absolutely no more questions to the planning officer? No, okay. Moving on, public speakers. I understand Nigel Roberts is going to speak on behalf of the Parish Council. You have 3 minutes to address the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm Nigel Roberts, Town Planner and Vice Chair at East Bergholt Parish Council. Today I will reinforce my Council's serious objections to this application. My focus will be on policy considerations where I believe the case officer's conclusions are misleading at best. The application involves 4 market houses outside the built-up area boundary on a landlocked garden site. This is contrary to neighbourhood plan policies EB 1, 2 and 3. No need, not affordable homes, and backland development. The principle of development is also not acceptable under new local plan policy SP03 and policy LP01 for sites outside the built-up area boundary. These are recently adopted policies and clearly mean that these 4 houses are not justified. There is also no basis to allege any exceptional case. In East Bergholt, we have 229 houses under construction, more than twice the evidence needs for 15 years. There is no policy justification to permit any more, especially on this sensitive site. The case officer says the points at issue with this application are the car and coach park. This would be the case, but only if you accept the 4 houses as given. The car park's new layout is only needed to provide access to the new housing. Without the houses, there's no need to make any changes to the car and coach park. But let's consider the consequences anyway. The proposals will rip up an existing facility, only rebuilt 2 years ago at £80,000 cost to the public purse. It will demolish a public toilet block with a net loss of 5 toilets, not 3. It will create an inferior layout with smaller spaces and the loss of 1 coach parking bay, and it will position the smaller toilet unit and 3 car parking spaces so they block the right of way to the cemetery. So the plan is not even achievable, and you'll see this on the map that has been provided by the Parish Council in your papers. These policies are contrary to the new local plan policy LP28, which prohibits development involving any loss of existing community facilities, and here we have just that. These proposals also still ride roughshod over the neighbourhood plan policy EP11, which safeguards this car park. So today, for you councillors, the question must be, is this application policy compliant? Are the housing and car park proposals in line with Babergh's development plan policies? And the answer is, I believe, demonstrably no. And on the substantive planning issues, this application fails. It cannot be justified by either local plan or neighbourhood plan policies, and neither are the proposals practically implementable.
And we'll see if anybody wants to ask you some questions. Any questions for the speaker? Councillor Crandon.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask whether you know how often 2 coach parking places are needed in the village, please? Do both spaces sometimes get used at the same time?
They do, and I should say it's not always for coaches. And so large delivery lorries servicing the village also use those spaces, and they're an important facility. So sometimes we may have a coach and a lorry, sometimes we might have a coach and a car. But there is certainly a need for 2. And there's been 2 in existence for decades.
Any more questions for the speaker? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The committee, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. I'm here to support the parish council as hard as I possibly can. We need our car parking spaces left as they are, and we need our 5 toilet spaces. It's used not only by outflung villagers coming into the centre of the village, but also traders, all sorts of people, riding by coach. First place of stopover is the toilets, of course. We need the 5. It may not look pretty, as your speaker says, but it's functional and it can be improved. I wrote to every single district councillor in April, 8th of April 2023. Now I gather might have been a change, you might not have had my letter, but I took the trouble to write to each and every one of you separately because I think it's so important to our village. You've heard that we are having another 230, basically, houses being built. We need extra spaces, not less. In the 1980s, Babergh district councillors, your predecessors, had the enlightened vision to rent and control of the current car park, even building the much-needed toilets in the village centre. How many villages do you know that have toilets facility in their village nowadays? Not many are left. We still have a post office. We need our parking. We do not need the building. We have a lot of building coming, and we absolutely do not know where to put them as it is. The parish council are also trying to use the congregational church, with which you will probably be aware, for forthcoming plans for it. Parking will be needed. St Mary's Church with pews removed to allow better seating for large community space to be available to the community. Where will all these people park? We have a lovely little village which Babergh district councillors foresaw and had the vision to see and help us. I'm asking you to not change that facility and do not allow these buildings to be built. At the moment, our pub is no longer a pub. Unfortunately, it should be buzzing. It's not. To coin a phrase, the lights are on, nobody's in. A lot of our community do not like what is happening and do not want these houses built. They may not be here today, but I know they're behind us and they're behind our parish council. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know if I understood you correctly there. Is the pub an active operating pub at the moment?
It's not a pub as we know it any longer. It's not frequented by local residents, basically. It now becomes a pub for well-off people coming to the village. And that, unfortunately, is the case. It's no longer where you go and have a pint of beer.
But it's open as a pub?
I'm not quite sure what you would call its title nowadays, I'm afraid. As what?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, anyway.
Councillor Beer.
Thank you. Well, it's either a pub or it's not. But my question is, the toilet block was explained quite clearly to me by our officer, who did an excellent presentation. Is leased by the parish council.
Correct.
Who owns the car park? Is that the property of the public house?
As far as I know, it is. But we have a lease over it. A long lease.
Councillor Boyman.
Thank you, Chair. Sort of a joint question, if I may, to both the parish council and the objector, please. You talked about the village and how you're involved in tourism and all the other various things and the heritage. Is there any intention on the part of the parish council and or the civic community to improve the facilities around the car park and actually sort of, engage perhaps with the caravan club for overnight parking or whatever, just to actually improve the actual facilities and also the issues relating to the toilet? Obviously it's down from sort of 5 spaces down to, 7 down to 2. Is that within, as the parish council hold the lease to the car park, is that permissible within the terms of the lease?
Would you like the parish councillor to answer that question rather than myself? Certainly, we need the toilet block. I know it's not fancy, but it's functional and it can be improved.
I think there are two questions. The first one is the parish council keen to maintain and improve the facility? The answer to that is yes, which is why we spent £80,000 of public funds on doing just that only 2 years ago. So we totally resurfaced the car park, we relined it, and we maintain all the soft landscape around it, and we have contractors who come in regularly to maintain that, and we see it as an important facility for the village, a necessary facility as a tourist facility as well, and equally, as Joyce has said, the toilet block is very important for tourists and for coach parties, and coach parties turning up are much better served with 7 public toilets than they are with 2. Inevitably, in relation to the does the lease provide? Well, we have a 20-year lease of which we have 12 years. The parish council has 12 years for it to run. After that, the freeholder, Langham Property Development Company, would be, assuming the lease doesn't roll over to the parish council, if he were to take the lease back, if they were to take the lease back, then they would be able, I presume, to do what they wished with it. But who knows what might happen at the end of 12 years.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Yes, I assume that for the cemetery that people would park in that car park to use the cemetery. And also, is there another car park in East Bergholt in the centre? I'm not aware that there is, but I don't know it that well.
No, I mean, parking is very difficult in the centre. The overspill from that car park has to park, or it chooses to park, on what we call the street, with a very narrow bend running around to St Mary's Church, and where the shop and, as Sam pointed out, the co-op is. It's very congested and it's very dangerous. And there is no other car parking. We are, as a parish council, we're very concerned because with another, probably somewhere between
Mr. Chairman, on a point of order and clarification, the question was to the objector. Yeah. We're now going through the parish council again, and I don't think that's fair unless you're going to let the applicants have the same sort of time addition.
Councillor Carruthers, exactly who are you asking the question to?
Either of them, really, whoever could answer it. Am I not allowed to do that? Sorry. Okay.
Hang on.
Sorry.
I think we're in the situation.
Has Councillor Carruthers had a satisfactory answer to her question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we can let it rest there.
Have you had a satisfactory answer? Yes, right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Catherine, Random, you were going to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. May I ask a question to the parish council, please? Oh, may
well, hang on. Yeah, we'll allow it at this time.
Thank you. In the papers, or in your objections, you talk about the size of the parking bays compared in the application compared with the existing parking bays? You say that they're smaller. Have you measured them, and do you know how much smaller they are, or can you tell me about this, please?
No, I don't have the detail of that, but when the car park was relined 2 years ago, we were aware that cars today are much larger than they were 20 or 30 years prior. In order to address that, we made sure that the spaces were each at an angle, so cars could easily manoeuvre in, and we increased the width. If you look at the plan,
I think you've answered the question. Have you got a satisfactory answer, Catherine? Thank you very much. With the speaker? No? In that case, we'll move on. We have nobody to speak on behalf of the application, but we do have the agent present. You, sir, have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Firstly, just a point of clarification. I'm the planning consultant appointed rather than the planning agent. Good morning, members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application. Noting the detailed committee report prepared by your officers and the reasoned recommendations set out therein, I'll focus my attention on the broader planning merits of the scheme. Through the provision of the storage building and B&B rooms, the proposal will serve to support the operations of the Red Lion Public House and in turn contribute to the present and future viability of the pub, a significant source of employment within East Bergholt. There is a demand for tourist accommodation locally, to which the proposed rooms will contribute, whilst also serving to diversify the accommodation offering within the area. In these regards, through the support of the local economy, the scheme will provide tangible economic benefits. The development makes provision for the replacement of existing toilet facilities located within the Red Lion car park. The facilities are considered to be of a higher quality than the existing, whilst the design of the building they are contained within is more sympathetic to its setting. The Red Lion car park itself is retained by the proposal. The housing element of the application will deliver 4 additional dwellings immediately adjacent to the East Bergholt built-up area boundary and within the village heart, an accessible location for occupiers of the development, serving to support local services and facilities and promote the use of sustainable modes of transport. The mix, size and type of housing proposed is considered to respond positively to the desire for smaller units and housing for older people expressed within the East Bergholt neighbourhood plan. The proposed scheme has been formulated with great weight forward to the conservation and, where possible, the enhancement of the landscape and scenic beauty of the AONB. It's equally true with regards to the conservation and of the significance of surrounding designated and non-designated heritage assets. Through its high quality and sympathetic design, the proposal integrates positively with the character of the area. Sorry. This is equally true with regards to the conservation of the significance of surrounding designated and non-designated heritage assets. Through its high quality and sympathetic design, the proposal integrates positively with the character of the area whilst reinforcing local distinctiveness. No harm to the AONB or heritage assets would arise. To conclude, the proposal is in accordance with the development plan when taken as a whole. Furthermore, the development will comply with the NPPF. The benefits presented by the development are significant and will not be outweighed by any measure, by any identifiable adverse impacts, of which we consider there to be none. We therefore respectfully ask members to approve this application in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the consultant? Councillor Beer.
Yes, I just asked on the EV electric charging points. They are available to the 4 new dwellings, I gather. Will you be speaking to the people who are redoing the car park and seeing whether they can put in the facilities for EV if they so wanted to do at a later date? Because once you're digging up a car park, you want to put in pipes and all sorts of things, so you don't have to dig it up again.
Thank you. To confirm, so obviously we're proposing EV charging points within the car park serving the dwellings. Obviously the conditions will pick up that detail. We've also just been confirmed that there's 3 EV charging points proposed within the actual car park itself.
Councillor Holt.
Could you confirm that the right-of-way to the cemetery will not be blocked in any way whatsoever? It appears we have had some contradicting comments. It appears on the map we saw they weren't, but can you confirm that that access will not be blocked? And the other point I was going to make was there is no loss of parking spaces, is there, in this plan? Can you confirm that?
Just a point of clarification, obviously I'm here to talk about specific planning related matters. In terms of private rights and private law, it's not something that I can obviously go into detail over. In terms of the public rights of way, there's no public rights of way within the site that will be impeded. Further,
Sorry, I meant access to the cemetery as a public right-of-way.
there will be access to the cemetery via the public car park. I believe there was a second question.
Second question, Councillor Holt.
Could you confirm there'll be no loss of parking spaces?
So in terms of obviously the officer report sets out that there will be effectively one coach bay that will be lost in effect. Obviously there's further information that's been provided about the functionality of that coach bay, and the officer has obviously gone through an exercise of explaining why the scheme is acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. The parish council were unable to say whether the new proposed bays, parking bays, were smaller, or comparing the size. Are the bays in the application smaller than the existing parking bays, please? Car parking bays.
I don't actually know what the size of the existing bays are. In terms of what I can comment on is the fact that the proposed parking bays are designed to meet Suffolk County Council guidance, so they are sort of to meet the standard specifications that the parking bays are required to meet today.
Thank you. Councillor Holt, you want to... Oh, come on, Councillor Register, you go first.
I'm trying to get one working. This one's working. Where was I? Right, yeah, just some clarification. What is the rationale between reducing the number of toilets from 5 or 7, depending on how you count them, down to 2 accessible toilets, given that you've already recognising that you've got coaches arriving, coaches which carry 40 people, most of which may well be in urgent requirement of a toilet, and I don't understand the logic of that. If you could explain, please.
In terms of the building itself, obviously there's been a lot of work put into designing something that's sensitive to the setting in terms of its size and design being of high quality. So I believe in terms of the design of the building, a lot of that was derived from the sensitivity of the setting. Within that building that was designed, obviously 2 cubicles have been identified. They're obviously wheelchair accessible. So in terms of the rationale, I think it's largely derived from a design response really, whilst also trying to provide facilities that cater for the local community.
Councillor Holt.
Just one other thing, yellow lines has been mentioned. I think one of the councillors mentioned they're on the drawings, one of the drawings, but actually who, if anyone, would be applying to have yellow lines applied within the car park perimeter? Would it be the applicant? Would it be the parish council? Because that has to go through, I believe, the county council, and it's not something that is easily given, I believe. So who would take that upon themselves to apply for yellow lines?
I suppose slightly falling outside of my expertise here, but in terms of the fact the car park is privately owned, from my point of view, the county council aren't effectively the the body responsible for demarking those the yellow lines. So I believe that would be something for the applicant, obviously, if they were delivering the development, that they would seek to provide those lines.
Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much. Oh, sitting up there, I can't see you. Councillor Davis, ask your question.
Hold on. Oh, it's on. Excellent. 2 questions. I note you've got heat pumps in the design, which is great. I didn't see any mention of PV panels or solar panels. Are they included?
But at this stage, there was nothing included. I think, given the setting and basically, obviously, the conservation area status, A, O, and B, etc. In terms of the methods that we incorporated, was try to, I suppose, balance out sustainability credentials versus also, high quality design. So at this moment in time, no, there are no solar panels being proposed through the application.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, you mentioned that these houses would be suitable for older people. Can you explain what it is about the design that makes it suitable for our older residents?
I'm going to defer to the architect who's here just to answer that question, if that's okay.
So the houses are designed for the open market, but they are designed...
Sorry, can you speak up?
The houses are designed for the open market, but they're suitable for elderly residents in so much as the ground floor lavatory can be converted into a bathroom, so that a bedroom could be positioned on the ground floor, so that it could be occupied on one level. It could also have a knockout panel incorporated for a lift. The building's a timber frame, and that would be quite straightforward to do.
Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers?
Hello, just going back to the car park and the double yellow lines. Who would enforce that? Would that, the car park's free, isn't it? So I don't know if anybody goes round there checking it, but if there are double yellow lines, if motorists did park on the double yellow lines, blocking the access to, say, the houses, would there be anybody going around to enforce that and to ticket them or ask them to move? That might be beyond your scope, I don't know.
I suppose what I can comment is it's probably exactly the same scenario as things are presently. I appreciate they'll have the other component of the housing and access. I suppose with any housing development where it's not adopted highway and it's enforced by sort of, I suppose, private law or regarding access and rights of access. So effectively, I suppose it would have to police itself or outside of the planning process of other sorts of regulations, really.
Thank you. No, thank you very much. I think you're getting away this time. We have next the ward member, Councillor Sally Davis. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Good morning, councillors. First of all, on the matter of the reduction of car parking spaces, we think there will be a reduction of car parking spaces because what's not been mentioned at all by the officer is there is a right of way along the car park and along the back. That is the right of way to the cemetery. On that at the moment is the new toilet and some car parking spaces. So we think this actual scheme can't be put into place without reducing the car parking because there's a right of way. That may not be a planning matter, but there is a right of way there. But the problem with this application is that it breaches East Bergholt's neighbourhood plan. The officer accepts this when she says the proposal overall is not completely policy compliant and then goes on to recommend approval. But hey, it's only a neighbourhood plan. So here's how it doesn't comply with our neighbourhood plan. There is no housing need. We've alluded to an assessment, a housing assessment that was in the papers that appears to have been done by the applicant's agent. We have 144 houses proceeding at pace in East Bergholt.
The 75 on a site that's already cleared, that's going to be proceeding at pace quite soon. We've got 10 already built. To suggest we're not meeting our housing need is incorrect. And in fact, the joint local plan, LPO1 at 1303, specifically says windfall infill developments is not considered necessary to meet district-wide need. So when the officer says that these houses are going to help to meet the district need, no. LPO1 says it is not necessary. EP2 states that affordable houses on sites outside or adjacent to the built-up area boundary will be encouraged, not speculative market homes. These houses are not affordable housing and they sit outside the BUAB. They do not comply with EB2 and we strongly reject the officer's assertion that they do. EP5 seeks to increase the housing options for elderly people, explicitly for elderly people, if development takes place near the village centre. These houses have steep stairs, the bedrooms are upstairs, and the wholly unconvincing explanation by the architect of how it could be adapted was unconvincing. They're not designed for the elderly. EB5, our neighbourhood plan, was quite specific that we wanted to encourage if anything takes place in the village centre, it should be for elderly people, and these are not. So the application breaches several policies of the East Bergholt neighbourhood plan. The recommendation to approve is therefore irrational because they have not taken this factor into account. We asked the committee not to ride roughshod over the East Bergholt neighbourhood plan because if this application is approved, what message does that send to the communities with adopted or emerging neighbourhood plans? The message is, don't bother. You've been led to believe that you can shape your communities and have a stronger voice through neighbourhood plans. But as this report shows, planning officers will discard your neighbourhood plan if it suits them. That is why it is so important that the planning committee gives our neighbourhood plan its proper weight and rejects this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for clarification, how old is your neighbourhood plan?
It was formed in 2016,
2016.
and we are renewing it now. We're reviewing it.
Thank you. I'd also like the Chief Planning Officer to clarify LPO1 to make sure members are...
Thank you, Chairman, if I may. Yes. Just for clarity, LPO1 refers to infill housing outside settlement boundaries. That term is expressly defined in a footnote as the filling of a small undeveloped plot in an otherwise built-up highway frontage. Your officers don't consider this is a small undeveloped plot in an otherwise built-up highway frontage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for the ward member? Councillor Holt.
How many of these houses that you mentioned that have got permission or being built are within the 800 metres of the village heart?
None of them. Just the 10. Oh, yeah. There's 10. There are 10 that are already built. They're specifically for over 55s and with a lifetime sort of condition on that. They're the only ones within 800 metres of the centre of the village.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Oh. Councillor Grandin, go on.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Do you know how many of the planned developments that are being built include two-bedroom? How many two-bedroom properties are included in the applications coming up?
What, the ones already being built
Being
at
approved.
the moment?
There's
Approximately would be fine.
about 30 or 40.
We think, yeah, I mean, the majority of them are 3 bedrooms and above. We think there's about 30 one and two bedroom homes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Davis. Right. I'll now open it up for debate. Would anybody like to kick off? Any comments? Councillor Holt, go on.
Right, I'll start. Thank you to everyone who's spoken. I think we've got an overview of two different views on an application that's before us. Certainly, the ward member is quite contradictory to the planning officer and a lot of policies that are referred to in the East Bergholt neighbourhood plan. Certainly when I look through the neighbourhood plan, I can see that they comply. It's all about interpretation really, isn't it? And I can see that certainly EB2, it complies. I also, when I look at EB3, I can see compliance, EB4, EB5. And I appreciate that perhaps the parish council thinks this development is one step too far. But when I read through the neighbourhood plan, and you almost say that the officers aren't respecting it and appreciating it, but through my reading of it, I can see compliance. So it's a difficult one, because I do agree with you that neighbourhood plans should be taken and given full weight as is directed, but perhaps in this situation, in this case, the wording of this particular neighbourhood plan is somewhat open to this type of development and scheme coming forward, which you may regret, as if it is given permission, then you may wish to go back and try and narrow that down. But looking at the viability side of things, the public house having 2 B&Bs to help it, enable it to succeed and perhaps move forward and become more popular within the village. The tourism side of things, the economy, the local economy, everything sort of ticks a lot of boxes. The car park, there isn't a reduction in spaces. You've lost 1 coach bay, which I accept, everyone accepts. The toilet block is reduced from 7 to 2. So there is a loss of toilet amenity there. But overall, I can't find the 1 or 2 negatives in this outweigh the overall compliance with policy and the need to help a local business and help tourism in which is a very popular tourism spot. So I can't really find a policy issue at the moment to go against the officer's recommendation, but I'm keen to listen to other members to see and gather their thoughts, and I'll have the option to come back later.
Thank you. Councillor Beer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, well, I fully concur with my colleague behind me. We've listened to a good report from our planning officer, who is the expert on this sort of thing. And whilst none of us like to believe that they're the experts, and I, for one, would be one of the first to say, well, they don't always get it right, I think on this occasion, you've done exceedingly well. Backland development was commented by somebody earlier on. That went out the window years ago. Now, you can build on backland. It happens in my village all the time, unfortunately. And you've got to have a real strong case to stop it. But it certainly isn't like it used to be, where you could just say, backland development, don't give it approval. It's not like that at all nowadays. We have to be flexible. We have to listen to the pros and cons. You've mentioned yellow lines. Now, I can tell you that that's the responsibility of Suffolk County Council, but the town or parish council can request yellow lines on highways. This is private property, so they certainly wouldn't put yellow lines onto it, but there's nothing stopping the parish council, and to get yellow lines, if the town or parish council wants them and the local county council supports this, they can happen quite quickly. It's still 2 years to get them. if it's private property, then you need to get a private firm that would manage the car park, but then somebody has to pay for that. So that's the other bit. Listening to a lot of the comments and listening to my colleague behind me, I think that I'm completely satisfied and I would like to recommend the officer's recommendation, and I ask you to ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the proposer. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Holt, do you want to speak now or speak later? Thank you. Councillor Beer, can you turn your microphone off since we're having fun again? Any other comments from anyone else? Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, being a ward member for Lavenham, which is one of the busiest tourist spots in our district, a few comments. I think East Bergholt are probably very, very fortunate that they have a private landlord for a car park. We certainly don't have one of those in Lavenham. And I could suggest I'm really surprised that the parish council have not tried to purchase their own land for a car park if they are so concerned about all of this. This is not getting away from the fact that car parking is probably needed within the parish. Lavenham also redid their public lavatory blocks and have reduced them considerably to, and these are unisex actually, but to larger facilities, because I could suggest, being a very tall lady, the normal size of public lavatories are very constricting. And I've, in the past, have had to stand on a lavatory to be able to shut the door. So I think any upgrade of lavatories is a really good idea. But Lavenham also reduced their number considerably, by about 60%. So they too have fewer, but it works. But they also have far more visitors. I have commented about the disabled facilities in these properties, and I understand what the architect is saying, because moving to homes for what we call for the whole of life are always a good idea. Notwithstanding the fact that perhaps a wheelchair user would need a lift or a stair lift to access the bedrooms upstairs, it is actually recommended for older people to actually use stairs because they're good for us. And I'm going to say us. If you use enough stairs, it does help your fitness considerably. I agree with two of my colleagues here that the officer's recommendation is the right one for this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mabry. Do I have anybody else who wants to? Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a really interesting sort of session, listening to all of it this morning. I think we all appreciate the input that everyone's made to both the application itself, the officer's details, and also the input that everyone's made. Personally, I feel conflicted because there seems to be quite a lot of contradiction between our new JLP policies and the somewhat probably slightly more out of date East Bergholt neighbourhood plan. I was particularly moved by Councillor Davis's comments on the neighbourhood planning process and how that could easily psychologically dent communities from entering into the whole thing, really. But having regard to Councillor Holt's comments on the date and inception of the neighbourhood plan, it does mean that potentially they may ought to spend a little time trying to improve it. It's a really difficult decision, but I feel minded to consider the issues over the windfall issues relating to the houses. There could be a situation potentially where you might imagine that the applicant might like to restrict the age of ownership to over 55s, which would be probably far more acceptable to the East Bergholt Parish Council. Other than that, Chair, I feel minded to refuse or go against the application.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councillor Davis.
Got it. Excellent. I agree with Councillor Wyman. It's quite a finely balanced judgment, and the idea of going against a neighbourhood plan is anathema to me. We've just had our own neighbourhood plan made last month, so we're hoping it will, influence decisions. And I know this is slightly older, but it still carries weight. In terms of the policies, SPO3 talks about the sustainable location of new development. This isn't a site that's allocated for development. It does say it has to be in accordance with a made neighbourhood plan, but we're being told by the experts on the neighbourhood plan, because they wrote it, that it is not in accordance with it. So that kind of brings some reservations in for me. I also don't like the fact it's outside the built-up boundary. I know it's right next to it, but I also thought that with developments that were outside a built-up area boundary, it really had to be a rural exception site, which then had housing that had particular categories, like it was protected for local use. So I'm still slightly on the fence. So if any of the other councillors can clarify my thinking for me, I would be grateful.
Phil, do you want to?
Well, Chairman, I'm not one of the councillors. Perhaps if I come back later once there's a bit more debate.
I thought you were going to clarify something for me.
Well, Chairman, I think it's fair to say that between ourselves and the parish council, and with all due respect to the councillors, we disagree that we're not complying with the neighbourhood plan. But that is fundamental to this, and I think what this committee is here to do is to apply the policies, not try and interpret them creatively. We have to take the ordinary natural meaning of these words and apply them. And I think if you take, for instance, EB3 as one policy about backland development, it says backland development won't be supported in two circumstances: developments that affect the character of a conservation area and setting and listed buildings. It doesn't tell you about backland development other than that. So in terms of that assumption that one is breaching the neighbourhood plan, and I respect Mr Roberts, and he and I have discussed planning matters and agreed and disagreed in the past. We are not here to try and interpret the policies. We have to apply the things as they're written. And as they're written, I think we take the view the development complies with the basket of policies. There will almost in every case be some policy you breach. It's almost inevitable. But in this instance, we take that basket of policies, your joint local plan, your neighbourhood plan, and we think the development complies. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Having a ward where I have a number, and my colleague over there, we have a number of villages involved with neighbourhood plans, some that have been in place for as long as the Bergholt one, but it's being updated, and they're treating it as a living document, not a monument set in stone. And maybe that's what the problem may be here, that we've got legislation that's coming through recently in 2023, and we're trying to relate it back something 6 years ago. Thank you. Was it Councillor Grandin you wanted to?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm having great difficulty coming to a decision because it is so finely balanced. And in fact, what I had been planning to do was request an officer explanation of how they came to that balance, if it was allowed. And partly Phil Isbell has explained that. I don't know if it's possible anymore to explain how the balance was achieved, that you've come to the decision that you have with the weighting, the weighting of the different aspects. Is that at all possible to request that, Chair? Or have we gone past that?
Let's just check whether the Chief Planning Officer can do something for you.
Yes, thank you.
Chairman, I'd be tempted to say the committee report is that balancing in detail. I think, I guess I would say that, wouldn't I? I think the JLP is quite clear about development outside the settlement boundary, but it does then reference on the neighbourhood plan, and so you've got to read both together. You can't read one on its own, and the policies of the neighbourhood plan take you into the EB policies, and EB1 is a minimum. And that question of need, I think this question of departure, which I think Councillor Davies referred to at the beginning, we acknowledge that we may not be in a perfect situation around SPO1, SPO3 and that question of need, but there is information around need, and I think if there is a departure, it is not significant enough to alter the overall balance of what you have in this. And I'm conscious that the parish have made a very forceful statement of their thoughts about this, and they will probably strongly disagree with me. But EB1 uses words which talk about a minimum of new homes, and it says nothing else about that. It simply says a minimum of 86 new homes. That presumably is, in parlance, a floor, not a ceiling, and here we are, we must make of it what we will. There are other policies in the Bergholt neighbourhood plan. I talked about EB3, and I think that has been mentioned, and that has specific criteria, and this is where you end up going with this. So, from my point of view, there is a balance to be drawn. There are some elements of some parts of the policies in the JLP that, and this relates to the need question, which I think we don't have an answer to because the needs assessment was inconclusive, as Sam has already described at length. You're then into what else you have within the neighbourhood plan, for instance, and I think it's EB11 is the car parking plan, the car parking policy, and that looks to safeguard this car park, and was the meat and drink of the earlier decision. And our view is that this application does achieve that. Planning Committee is there to look at differences of opinion, and what can I say, but here we are. Our conclusion is that taking all of this application on its own merits, we think that the neighbourhood plan is not being trampled upon. We think that the joint local plan is being complied with. There are elements of this basket of policies that are not complied with. I talk about need as an element, but in the end, we take the view that the balance goes in favour. To talk about weight individually will be a very long conversation, which I think Sam tried to do. It's written into the report. It would be wrong for me to try and rewrite this in this presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo Councillor Davies's thoughts about this. This is really, really difficult. I can see that there's clearly a need for storage and holiday accommodation on the site, and there doesn't seem to be any issue with that. However, with the housing developments, there are already a lot of houses coming forward in East Bergholt, and it seems as though there's quite a lot of two-bedroom houses being planned, so maybe they don't need any more. For me, the issue is with the car park and the loss of coach parking, and knowing how important, the tourism is in East Bergholt. If you've only got one coach parking space and fewer loos, it doesn't help, does it? It's a shame. It's a real shame that you have to take it all as one, rather than if it was separated, then you do have to take it as one application. So that's all I'm saying, really.
Thank you. Although you may want to have listened to Councillor Maybury telling you how well it had worked reducing the number of toilets in Lebanon. Anyway, Councillor Maybury, you wanted to join in? You see, I listened to some of your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you very much. I think I'm an expert on public lavatories after having to, in the past, visit so many. I've forgotten what I was going to say, but I think my comments really were going back to East Bergholt's neighbourhood plan, mentioning again Lavenham. Lavenham are on the final stage of their review, which was made in the same year as yours, which is 2016. So I would urge you to have a look at that. Within your neighbourhood plan, I believe that that your restriction is on the number of properties that you wish to see within the village at any one time. And this, obviously, this number of 4 is well under the figure that I remember being quoted. My other comments actually do come back again to the car park. Yes, it is protected under your neighbourhood plan, but I reiterate again, you are so lucky that you have a private person, a private landlord that has a piece of land that is allowing a car park. I see some shaking of heads, but we're all entitled to our own comments. We do not have that in other places. You should be well aware of that. But really, what I'm trying to say is, although you may think that your neighbourhood plan is being pushed into the long grass, I think the interpretation of it is being looked at very thoroughly, very carefully and very compassionately. And I still stand by what I say, that I would support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Councillor Holt, you were looking for...
Yeah, it was just that, obviously, the neighbourhood plans. As a plan member, I mean, we personally look at neighbourhood plans and give them a lot of weight as they truly deserve. But they contain policies which are no different to our local plan policies and national policies. They're there for interpretation, and they do run their time, and sometimes they run out of date and they need refreshing. So I'd just like to reassure Parish Council and members of the public that personally I always look at a neighbourhood plan and give it as much weight as it deserves, and in this case it deserves a lot of weight. But the interpretation of the policies that it contains, as presented by the officer, is that it supports this type of development. And I can't see within the current neighbourhood plan any reason to go against the officer's recommendation on a balance of all the policies that are in there and in our new local plan and in the MPPF. But I just want to reassure that the neighbourhood plan is given its full weight.
Thank you. Any more comments? If not, Councillor Register.
So I've listened to that debate and I'm as conflicted as several other members. B&B and the storage, no problem whatsoever. I don't think anybody's got any problem with that. The dwellings, do they meet neighbourhood plan policies? Do they meet the policies of the JLP or our own special policies? Seems to be a matter of debate. What message are we sending if we ignore the neighbourhood plan? But we then end up in interpretation of the neighbourhood plan, as the planning officers, chief planning officer pointed out. And then we come to the car park. And the toilets, I really am not convinced that 2 toilets to serve serve one coach party is enough. I'm sorry. Having worked in Melford for a number of years and watched coaches arrive and watched the queues for the toilets in local pubs, I'm unconvinced. I'm on the basis of the car park and my lack of conviction in the interpretation of the policies, I'm minded to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll get the Chief Planning Officer to sum up what the proposal is at this time.
Chairman, I wasn't actually going to do that. If I may, I might just take a small detour via EB11 of the neighbourhood plan, if we could get that up on the screen, just so we have the words in front of us and understand the issue.
Okay, bearing in mind you will have to then look at the proposal. Thank you.
So So EB11 says the red line car and coach park identified on map 19 shall be safeguarded for parking. Doesn't say for how many cars or coaches, it just says for parking. Change of use of the site shall only be permitted if alternative parking provision of a similar size is provided in a location accessible to the local facilities in the village heart. Now, whether this policy says what people wanted it to say when they thought they were getting to that point, I don't know. But applying that policy, and I will ask my case officer just to confirm, this is not a change of use of the site as far as I can see.
No change of use.
And in terms of parking, there is nothing specified numerically in EB11 which we believe would be offended. Now, appreciating the aspiration here, you have three options as far as I can see. There's a motion to approve. If you don't wish to go down that route, then I will be looking for a reason for refusal from committee, and I will need members to give me the harm and the policy references that justify that reason so that that can be defended should the matter go to appeal. If there are issues that you feel have not been addressed within this application, then the other alternative is to seek to defer it and to seek amendment or revision to those issues. You've got a motion on the table. That's as far as I'm going to go at the moment, Chairman.
Thank you. No comments? Right, we'll go to a vote. Do you want... Claire, have you got exactly what the motion says?
Yes, it says
As is per officer's recommendation. The voting is now open.
Councillor Beer, can I take your vote?
Approve.
Thank you. Councillor Holt, can I just ask you to... Yeah, thank you. Councillor Grandon, are you having problems? Would you... Okay, thank you. Thank you, members. Chair, that's 6 votes for and 4 against. Therefore, that's carried.
That's carried. Thank you very much. And let me say 5-minute break while we clear the room and get ready for the next one. Please, will you stick to 5 minutes? And if you're going out, Right, moving on. Planning application DC 2204751, Brett Vale Golf Club, Noakes Road, Raydon, IP75LR. I will now ask the case officer, Emily Vike, to introduce the application to us, if you would be so kind.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. This application is DC/22/04751 at the site addressed as Brett Vale Golf Club, Noakes Road, within the Raydon parish. It's a full planning application seeking change of use of land for the siting of 38 lodges in addition to an existing number of 9.
Sorry,
And-
Emily.
Emily, could you get closer to the mic?
Apologies.
People over there can't really.
Pull it towards you.
Am I coming through better?
Yep.
Great. And the construction of raised decking for each unit. This presentation is provided as a further visual and spoken accompaniment to the committee report and is not designed to supplant the information contained in that report. It is intended to provide members with an introduction to the application and a springboard for discussion of the information in the report, of points raised by speakers and in other representations. Since publication of the committee report, please be aware that Place Services Landscape has provided re-comment, which has been tabled. They have acknowledged that the amended 38 lodge layout and noted the concern for the formalised avenue of tree planting along the track serving the additional 38 lodges. This is considered to be unsympathetic to the rural landscape. For this application to date, there has been 40 representations received in response to public consultation and a further additional representation made this morning. That brings the tally to 36 in objection, 4 were in support and 1 was of a neutral stance. The most common matters raised in consultation were the increased traffic, highways impact, impact to local wildlife, impact to landscape, light pollution and noise, and the scale of the development. The red line plan was amended on the 6th of November 2023 to the reduced site area of 7.35 hectares. It should be noted that the red line now includes the existing car park with a capacity of 150 spaces, the clubhouse, and the existing access to the Noakes Road highway here serving the golf club. And this spoke off of the car park here serves an existing 9 lodges that are not quite fully represented on this plan. The blue line that is cut off is the remainder of the 18-hole golf club, and it's approximately 46 hectares. The highway here, Sully's Hill, separates the red line site in 2 portions. This is an unclassified road that is designated as a quiet lane and has a national speed limit. These photographs show the crossing point on the Sully's Hill road. So you can see the site is split in 2, and the top photo shows the view looking towards the site where the 9 lodges are that were observed at the committee site visit. And on the bottom photo, you can see the isolated portion of the site. It should be noted that the area seeking change of use in the red line is towards the left of the frame, and the area remaining as recreational golf course land is to the right of the frame. So there's still a portion that remains blue lined on that isolated parcel of land. Currently, this land is in recreational use and is laid out as the 13th, 14th and 15th and 16th and 17th holes of the golf club. So that is, loosely speaking, number 17 is here, number 13 would be here, number 16 is about here, number 15 runs this way, and number 14 runs this direction on that land. So it's mainly, with the reduced red line, the holes 14 and 15 that are now affected by the change of use for the siting of 38 lodges. You can see that the topographical survey has picked up some bunkers, and the wooded areas are mainly the rough areas of the current golf course arrangement. In the northeastern corner, you can just see the turning circle for those 9 lodges. These were approved under DC/1705433. They were given permission with a condition attached restricting their occupation to short-term holiday lets so that they cannot be used as a sole residence. The operators and owners of the 9 lodges are required to keep a log of the visitors to the site with their addresses. For this application, there has been an indicative proposed golf course redevelopment plan supplied. This is shown here on the screen and shows the relocation of the holes on that isolated piece of land onto the main golf course. So 17 and 18 have now adjusted accordingly by this indicative plan. It should be noted, however, that the proposal's description does not explicitly include the potential for the associated engineering works for the redevelopment of the golf course. But the planning statement does suggest and acknowledge that to deliver the 38 lodges on site, at least 3 of the golf course holes would need to be relocated. This aerial map shows the site in the context of the wider 18-hole golf course, so that's outlined in light blue here to give you an idea of how that stretches out and is mainly where the main golf course facilities are located, so the clubhouse and the existing car park. The area also shows the relationship of the site to the nearest settlement, Raydon. So in planning terms, this site is within the countryside, which is deemed under policy SPO3 to be the least sustainable location to host new development. It should also be noted that Raydon is a hinterland village and not very well served by public services, facilities and transport connection. There is a bus stop at Rectory Close, but that has not been confirmed whether that's still in use presently. The site is subject to some other constraints also, in particular from surface water flooding. So this map from the Environmental Agency's long-term flood risk mapping tool shows the land here is subject to a small proportion just there of surface water flooding still, and also in the context of the wider golf course, reaching up to here, as we saw before on the aerial plan. It is peppered with small areas of surface water pooling. There is one area more towards Mount Pleasant here that is of a similar proportion to the site area under consideration of this application, and does appear to have less instances of surface water flooding. Therefore, in considering this application, the MPPF sequential test under paragraph 167, I believe, is engaged for this application. Some other site constraints to be aware of are the cluster of listed buildings. These are grade 2 towards the northwest here. The public footpath network running from the boundary to the south with the site, leading up to the settlement, and the other residential neighbours. So there's Pippins here just on the corner, and Snow Downs, which does share boundaries with the site. It is understood that these paddocks here are a registered private nature reserve with Suffolk County Council, and there is also the constraint for the site being borderline with the area of outstanding natural beauty, so the Dedham Vale. This is the proposed site layout presented for the change of use and the arrangement of the 38 lodges. You can see that the gross density, when considering usable area under the calculation for caravan licensing, comes at 10 lodges per hectare. It is understood that the caravan licensing calculation suggests that a maximum density of 60 lodges per hectare would be considered appropriate in terms of licensing a caravan site. Generally speaking, the lodges are spaced at least 10 metres apart, and you'll note they are spread across from the existing turning circle, still using the crossing point, and then spread around a ring road here. That ring road track is a width of 4 metres across and is an extension to that existing spoke from the main car park. As members will have observed at the site visit, there are 9 existing holiday lodges on site. This photo shows one of them. The intention is to have the new lodges in a similar colour palette, so muted tones that would be sympathetic to the landscape. And as the planning statement suggests, these lodges would meet the legal definition to be classed as a caravan, but would not have a resemblance to a caravan in the traditional sense. Members should be aware that caravans are not considered development, but you do need to change the use of the land for their siting, which is what this application is considering within that red line. There have been 3 example lodge models put forward that could be sited upon the land. These are shown here. The top elevations show the Havana Lodge model. This is a 2-bedroom unit. The middle elevations shown here show the Casa de Luso model, which is a 3-bedroom unit. And the bottom elevations here show the Bella Vista model, which is a 2-bedroom unit again. These are labelled that they meet the British Standard BS 3632 for residential park homes, which would essentially be the legal definition of a caravan. There is no mix suggested on the previous site layout that we looked at for these three models, if they were to be used in terms of arrangement. However, the general arrangement would be a freestanding raised deck, as shown here by this blue L-shaped block, and then the lodge sited adjacent to it. And that raised terrace would give access into the individual lodges. So there are a number of steps here and here. The design of the lodges was commented upon by the AONB officers. They had some concerns for the amount of glazing that was shown on those modules that were given as examples. They also have concerns in terms of the impact of external lighting and the impact of noise upon the tranquility and scenic beauty and the dark sky status of the AONB. This proposal is supported by a landscape impact assessment and an external lighting scheme. This plan here is from the impact assessment for the landscape and shows the site's relationship with the wider AONB. The land immediately adjacent to the site is considered to be upland fringe character area. And these are the examples of the bollards with a downward cow and the downlights with a time operation that have been put forward to serve the development. It is also indicated by the planning statement that the lodges would be, there would be some wildflower meadows incorporated into the arrangement of the lodges for landscape enhancement. But it should be noted that the proposal relies heavily on the existing screening of the landscape that is at the boundary of the site. This is shown here by an image within the planning statement. These are well-established tree belts and hedgerows. LP 18 calls for non-major development and development in the setting of the AONB to integrate positively with the special landscape, reinforce distinctive character, enhance the scenic beauty, and be sensitive to the natural landscapes defining features such as the dark skies and its tranquility. For context, this is how the site appears from the AONB. So the top photo was taken looking at the public footpath route that runs adjacent to the site boundary to the south. This is the established tree planting that is at the border there and helps to screen the development site. From the inside of the site, which is the land again to the left on this occasion. So this is a photo taken looking for a gap within that tree planting here. So there is small glimpses that can be seen, but what is notable is the contrast in the landscape. So the recreational land is obviously has an appearance of being managed, manicured, whilst the surrounding land of the AONB is much more agricultural and in contrast to the kept manner of the golf course. These photos show the screening from the Sully Hills access again, so there is a well-established hedgerow along the site boundary there, and also for awareness, the amount of screening afforded by the established planting does differ in the winter months. So this photo was taken in the winter of 22 when there was snow on the ground, and you can see that the trees have lost their leaves at this time. So there is potential for more light spillage to occur towards the R&B in these circumstances, and the site is much less contained. A detail has been given for the track to be extended to serve the 38 lodges. This is the construction detail here. You can see that it is treated with a limestone aggregate surface, so chipped finish. The planning statement suggests that the arrangement would be for the visitors to use golf carts from a pool of shared golf carts to transport the visitors from the reception at the golf course to each lodge, where there would be an electric vehicle charger available to recharge the golf buggies. And private car parking of the visitors would be reliant upon the spare capacity of the 150 space car park. So that is intended to meet the demand of the lodges and continue to serve the membership of the golf course. We have no details of the current membership, so cannot confirm under policy LP29 if there's capacity to serve both the additional need of the 38 lodges and the membership of the golf club's day-to-day needs. These photos show the existing arrangement for parking and access to the 9 lodges that were observed at the committee site visit. You can see that the track that is already laid is treated differently to that which is proposed for the additional. It is tarmacked, and there is the ability for private car parking to occur at the lodges on the 9 that are existing. So there would be a different arrangement for the additional 38 as to what there is at the moment, but that's shown here in these photos. You can also see the existing clubhouse and the residence of the managers, which the planning statement suggests would manage the movement, so the access to the lodges. These photos are just a visual on the condition of the car park. This was taken on a snow day where the course was closed in 2022. So there was obviously no vehicles parked there at the time. And this is the existing access point to Noakes Road, serving the golf club. You can see the visibility here and that there is no laid pavement. The settlement can be reached in this direction here. It's The highways team have removed their holding objections since the submission of a traffic highways mitigation scheme. It is proposed to create 3 new vehicle passing places along the surrounding quiet lanes. So that would be Noakes Road, Raydon Road and Sandpits Lane. So sorry, it's a little bit difficult to see, but that would be one here on Sandpits Lane, which is the same one repeated here. One here on Raydon Road, so this is your main access just up here with the car park. Oh, sorry, no, Noakes Road here. And this is the one on Raydon Road, so that's 3 in total. This photo again shows the approach from the east to the Surrey Hills crossing point, just seen here. It is signposted on this tree, but what this photo shows is that there is a degree of surface water pooling after recent rainfall on the approach here. The scheme has been supported by a flood risk assessment. This image here is taken from the most recent version supplied for the 38 lodges. It shows in detail where the areas at most flood risk are. So there are mainly pools towards the north of the site, which unfortunately this red line has not reflected the change that has recently occurred, but I believe that is still within the red line, and this certainly is here and here. But what is also notable is there are small areas. There is a light blue here where that photo was taken and there was the pooling that had occurred, and there is obviously surface water pooling at high risk here on the Sully's Hill in both sides of that crossing point to be aware of. The proposal is also supported by a drainage strategy in response to the surface water flood risk. It is proposed to channel the surface water along the ring road that would be extended from the existing track serving those 9 lodges. In this instance, the water would drain either to a soakaway or to an attenuation pond here. And it is also shown that there would be a packaged private sewage treatment plant to serve these lodges as well. The Suffolk Floods and Water team have maintained a holding objection for the latest flood risk assessment that has been submitted and the drainage strategy for surface water, saying that it's insufficient detail for this scale of application. So overall, the proposal is considered contrary to the development plan on account of this site's location in the countryside, for which SPO3 is resistive of new development apart from in exceptional circumstances, as allowed in accordance with another policy from the joint local plan, such as LP12, criterion 2 here, for which extensions to existing tourism facilities outside of settlement boundaries may be supported where the proposal is of an appropriate scale for their context, amongst other expectations that have been listed above. For this application, there is the concern from the AONB team, project team, raised for the scale in particular, not being respectful, that it has an estate-like quality to it, and would potentially impact the tranquility of the AONB. So that also is in conflict with another policy, specifically LP18 of the joint local plan, that safeguards the special qualities of the AONB. Under SPO3, there is also allowance by LP13 if the proposal accords with it for new tourist accommodation within the countryside, if it can be demonstrated that there is an overriding business need for it to be in that location, and also if it's an extension such as this to upgrade an existing provision, then it must deliver a balanced mix of economic, social and environmental benefits. Limited and high-level justification has been given in the planning statement for a business need, such as the increase of employment at the site, so raising from 15 to 20 full-time positions, which are detailed as working in reception, management of the new lodges, the clubhouse, the function room, general cleaning and housekeeping roles. But it should be noted that this was prepared, this planning statement, for the larger scheme as well. So it hasn't been updated to reflect the 38 lodge scheme. The intention is to increase the business offerings that obviously are already in place. And the need that is given is that there is a decline nationwide experience with golf membership, and following the COVID pandemic, there is a interest in staycations that has increased, and they would like to continue to diversify the business with this offering. There is also the aspiration alluded to redevelop the golf course. The applicant has submitted a brief business plan which indicated the proposed allocation of finance from the sale of some of the lodges to then acquire the other set of lodges. So it would be a staged arrangement of financing. The economic development team have had a look at the details of the business plan that was provided, and have advised that it appeared to be reasonable in terms of the financing arrangement. However, it should be noted that there is no mechanism to secure that the finances from the lodges would then be fed back into the course redevelopment. In consideration of paragraph 187 of the NPPF for effective use of land, the new development should be integrated with the existing business and not cause unreasonable restrictions upon it. There is still concern surrounding the uncertainty of the speculative golf course rearrangement and the scale of the development's impact upon the core business, which could give a rise to conflict between the two uses as one is intensified. And also if the redevelopment of the golf course is not followed through in the phased manner as suggested by the planning statement. Therefore, under SPO 7, new sustainable tourism development will be supported in the district when it's of appropriate scale, character and nature for the locality. The scale of this development remains questionable for its whether it's appropriate to the AONB, and also whether it would cause a conflict with the core business activity on the site. I'm missing a slide.
Thank you. Thanks, Emily.
No problem.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions?
Touched on several times about the relocation of the 3 holes that would be built on, effectively. But there was no evidence as to where that relocation would be. I think in slide 6 you showed us a map when talking about relocating the 3 holes, but there was no evidence as to where they would be. Is that correct?
That map does show the relocation of the freeholds. The missing element is the existing arrangement is not properly detailed.
Can we get slide
Yeah,
6
of
up
course.
and just show me where the 3 holes would be, please?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, so bear with me, I've just got to get my bearings on where the existing holes
It's
are.
14, 15 and 16. I think,
Yeah.
the 3 holes.
Okay, right, so at the moment, with the red line reduced, it would seem that it would be 15 and 14 that are most affected. So 15 is here presently, and 14 is here. That's my understanding of the current arrangement of the golf course, but I've not had a plan to confirm that. I think, yeah, the issue is that the rearrangement doesn't give us the full picture of the total land ownership and the golf course arrangement, so we cannot see where those golf numbers would be relocated to. It may be that they're further up the golf course and it's had a knock-on effect and other holes have been designated or relabelled, but I can't confirm that for you.
So nothing's been supplied by the applicant to show where the 3, because number 16, I think where on the site visit, was confirmed as not going to be used. So it was 3 holes that were going to be put aside for this, and no provision has been supplied by the applicant as to where they would be relocated to ensure that the 18-hole golf course continues as 18 holes. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Second question, if I may.
Carry on.
The ownership of 3 parking places you mentioned, again, I assume the applicant does not own the land to be able to confirm that these 3 parking places would actually be permitted.
Yep, that's correct. It would have to be through a agreement with Suffolk County Council's Highways team.
And a third question, you mentioned sale of the current lodges
Yep.
to fund the rebuilding of the golf course.
So it would not be sale of the current lodges. Perhaps I didn't explain it very well. The business plan that was received suggested that the 38 would be split into two portions, and some of those would be sold on to then sell and fund the other half of the 38.
So if we were to give permission for this, we would be actually permitting lodges to be built and sold as permanent residence rather than holiday lodges.
So we don't have a management agreement, or we only have a business plan that is limited in detail for how they would be managed. But essentially, there is the danger that they could be sold off.
Thank you.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you. My first question is it Noakes Road, the road that leads to the car park and to the site? How many premises does that road serve, please? Are there other residences and so on?
Along the main road?
Is it called Noakes Road?
Yeah,
The road
it's
that
Noakes
leads
Road.
To the car park.
Yeah, could I get a map up to help? Trying to think which is there. Okay, so yeah, this stretch here is Noakes Road, and that is obviously serving at the moment the golf course, which has the 9 existing lodges. There is also the residence of the manager of and owner of the golf course as part of that, so that's 10 residences there. I believe this land here is an equestrian centre. There is the listed building here, just shown. So I think that would also be within Noakes Road, so that's up to 11. And I think there's a couple of properties cut off here that I can't confirm to you how many there are, but possibly 2 more. So about 13, probably no more than 15 properties.
Thank you. And my other question is, I might have misunderstood something when we went on the site visit. I had thought that it was a footpath, a public footpath that was crossing the site and that you showed us. But have I misunderstood? Is it because I think you mentioned about the vehicles and it being the normal vehicular speed? I can't remember the correct terminology for that. So is it an actual road that goes through the site, please? Please, could you enable me to understand what I saw?
I'll just get the
Thank
photo
you.
back up for you. Trying to think which one would be the best one to show you what's going on the ground. So the indicative layout, as it is, do you mean the extension to the road, whether that's a public footpath?
No, it was, I thought I had understood it as a public footpath going through the site near where the new lodges are going to be put. But I'm now thinking it's not a public footpath, it's a vehicular route. Or have I misunderstood? Could you explain what? It might be Sully's Hill, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so Sully's Hill is a highway.
Yes.
It's designated as a quiet road, so under that designation there is less traffic movement, so it is more suitable for walking. So it is used by horse riders and members of the public frequently walk along that. So it's not a public footpath as such, but there's because of its designation as a quiet road, it is frequented by walkers. Is that
so?
Does that help?
So maybe that's the one. But cars can use it then, can they?
Yeah,
use it?
it's a highway with a national speed limit.
I had misunderstood. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Holt, you had another question.
Yeah, it was just picking up on Councillor Grandin, really. I think you showed in one slide the makeup of a track, which I believe was running from the main car park area, which was going to lead to all the lodges down at the lower end. Now, that track was purely of a shingle stroke stone makeup, which is purely like for buggies. No vehicles would be able to use it. It wouldn't be wide enough or constructed to hold a vehicle. Is that correct?
I can't confirm if it is constructed to hold the weight of a vehicle. It was commented on by one of the consultees that it would need to be able to accommodate a refuse collection, I believe. I can't remember which consultant. It must be in the waste services. It's 4 metres. It would be finished by shingle. It's supposed to be permeable to capture the surface water, and it is presented as only being for use for transportation of the visitors by the golf carts from the shared pool. There hasn't been any suggestion that it would be used by the private for the private vehicles of the visitors.
Just that when we were on the site visit, I believe the applicant confirmed that there would be only buggy access to the lodges, and no vehicles would be permitted to park beside them, which raised various concerns about emergency vehicles and access for ambulances, etc., if people fell ill. And also, I think it's crucial that we are fully aware of what track that is and what vehicles it can take, because to me there's a large concern about emergency access vehicles being permitted on site and being able to get to the lodges if they were given permission.
Okay. The fire services, Suffolk Fire Services, have commented and they haven't raised objection to the scheme, I believe, in that regard.
again, looking at the fire services letter, it's perhaps someone else could advise us here, but it's basically passing the buck to Anglian Water. Don't really comment one way or the other, to be honest. It references volume part 1B5, volume 2 part B. I mean, these mean nothing to us. They may mean something to you, but would a fire engine be able to get on that site without being bogged down and gain access? And it's 600 metres from the nearest water supply. You know, it's a concern. That's all I'm saying.
You mean you're in the situation where you think it may not have been fully thought out?
I would concur, yes, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wyman, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. This question may help me have a bit of context around what we're sort of seeking to look at today. But on slide 5, it shows the ongoing requirement of development and the time restriction on holiday lets. I think that was in relation to the original planning application, DC 1705433. Could I ask if the applicant is compliant with that current requirement? Would anyone know?
I can check for you whether there's an enforcement case there. I don't believe there is.
Thank you. My second and slightly sort of further point really relates to a point Councillor Holt made in relation to the sale of assets. There's an expectation that from the initial requirement in the point 9 that they have some control over the way these operate. So in relation to the sale of the holiday rental, might this not give lack of control to the applicants by the sale of the homes to other people? And the further question really is, you know, what is the definition of holiday? The office holder made reference to short-term holidays. You know, are we talking about short-term holidays? I mean, when we undertook the site visit, the 9 original homes looked quite permanent, in all honesty. It was difficult to differentiate when someone's got quite an elaborate garden shed and various other assets in their gardens that they possibly be holiday homes.
And you couldn't possibly comment on the substantial wheels that were hidden up inside the homes? Can I just ask you a question? Do I understand what we're talking about with a holiday let like this is that it is limited to 11 months of the year?
There have been various ways of looking at this problem. The 11-month a year solution didn't work because it typically would be a month in February and then just go and live in Spain. You know, so it didn't work. What we tend to do now is something like no more than 28 days within a certain period of time. I think perhaps that condition that Emily showed there, I don't know if that's the right one, but it's all about limiting the number of times and the amount of time somebody's there at any given time, and also it shouldn't be their main home.
It seems to deviate, Chair, from the principle of a holiday, doesn't it, really?
Sorry, can you repeat?
It seems to deviate from the principle of what we might all consider to be a sensible holiday when you can almost have 11 months of the year occupancy.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Maybury, you were next.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My learned colleagues have asked all the quiet questions I was going to ask, bar one, which is under 7.19. You mentioned something about an increase in functions. So does this mean that the whole business principle is being geared up several notches? It's under 7.19. I don't know on what slide, but that was the number. It was more towards the end, I think. Sorry, I didn't write the slide number down. I just wrote the number. Perhaps I can find it on another page. No.
So it was a question about the business plan.
Yes, the business plan, because it mentions about upgrading to
This is included within their planning statement.
Also, yeah, that's the one. It will also continue to expand the market for functions, including weddings, conferences. So basically, the business plan, from me reading that, is that they are going to upgrade and substantially expand the business, which will obviously be more and more people to that area.
Yeah, the business plan does allude that the lodges, the finance would feed back into the golf course and redevelopment of it and the facilities that they offer. But as mentioned, there isn't a mechanism to secure that the profits from the lodges and the benefits of that would feed back into that.
I'm sorry, that's not my question. My question is that business plan is trying to expand further and further what they're offering. So that will increase the visitor numbers, however you'd like to call it, to that area substantially. Because we're talking weddings. Weddings can be 30 or, I mean, I've been to weddings that are 600 people. So what are we looking at? Or don't we know?
Yeah, so that they do propose that they want to diversify their offerings as a business. This is the information I have for that. I have no more than this.
Okay, thank you.
I think you've got to take the... We're looking at this application as it stands, and in the report there has been problems, I think, making contact with the applicant to discuss the business plan. Phil, would you like to fill in on that?
Thank you.
Chairman, I mean, we've had the application for some while. Emily has referred to various things which aren't part of the application as it sits before you today, and as you rightly say, Chairman, decide the application in front of you, not one you might like to have. So I think it's fair to say there's, you've got the information you've got and you must make a decision on what's in front of you. Just so you're aware on this business point, the applicant did email me yesterday in the afternoon, and that's not in your late papers, but just to summarise, he's told me he's now, for various personal reasons, relinquished responsibility to his son, and his son's had to let go of 5 members of staff because this is a long-running and very expensive application. Mark and I have met with him. I think he feels that meeting was unhelpful from his point of view in business terms, and he is concerned this is his 3rd unsuccessful planning application, which has taken 15 months, and it's had its toll on both him and the business. He made some comments about the hostility which he feels he's experienced locally, and I'm not going to repeat those comments here, but I think his perspective is that he's invested over £200,000 trying to get this application to a form that works, and he would like his business to grow and prosper. And Chairman, I don't think there's much more I can add other than to say that's his perspective on where we are.
Thank you. Councillor Beer, you have a question for the
Well,
officer.
Mr Chairman, unfortunately I've got to leave because I have another commitment this afternoon. But what I wanted to say, and I think the question's to you, the fact my colleagues behind us brought up 3 good points, and then I think you had a 4th one of you as well, which the officer couldn't, with great respect, give the answers because she wasn't made aware of them, and she could only surmise on some of them and give how she interpreted it, if I'm correct. And now what the Chief Planning Officer said, that he's finding a great difficulty with speaking to the applicants or getting them to talk more. I was wondering whether we should defer this to get more information, but it doesn't sound like you would get more information after hearing that. But as I say, I have to leave, but if you can just answer that point before I go. I don't know whether there's anything other than sitting here and debating it for a long time.
My advice would be, as described by the case officer, it's gone on for a long time. It did follow a negative pre-application case probably 2 years ago now, and the message has generally been the same. We haven't been presented with a credible business case, so that's where we are all this time later. So I wouldn't recommend deferring.
Sorry, I have to go.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I've had to rely on a lift today, so I need to go too. Very sorry, but...
With a much reduced number, shall we carry on?
Chair, I could just answer that question for Councillor Wyman about enforcement case effectively. We did have an allegation of a breach of the condition earlier this year, and the case is closed. So I'd have to say my records show there's no live case which is alleging a breach of the condition of occupancy.
Any other questions? Fine. We have public speakers. Claire, the first one is...
The case officers just said to me that there should have been a slide with some reasons for refusal on, as you normally expect, and it's not. Do you want to just tell?
It's in the written report.
It's in the papers anyway, so as long as members are happy with that, we don't need them read out again.
Yeah, you can talk about the reasons for refusal.
No, it was just to give the recommendation.
Yeah.
It matches with those in the report, and there was a tabled reason, which is a lack of biodiversity net gain. So that's all I wanted to make aware of.
Okay. Chair, may I add to that?
Philip,
Philip,
yes.
As he left, did suggest that we put any other reasons as the Chief Planning Officer may see fit.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. We have now a...
He's not joined the meeting, James from Raydon, so we'll go straight
Andrew.
Sorry, Andrew Scott has
Andrew
joined the
Scott.
meeting, so we'll go straight to James from Raydon.
Okay. Andrew Scott from Shirley Parish Meeting hasn't joined us. In that case, we'll move to Jane Tan, who is a member of Raydon Parish Council.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes, if I can find the right implement, to address the committee. Thank you.
I would just like to say that we have serious objections to this application. There are 9 lodges already on the golf course. In a previous meeting, we were informed by somebody who lives in one of those lodges that they have a 12-month dwelling and they live there permanently, for your information. The application for 38 further lodges are sold with 12-month dwellings as long as the resident has a second address. The lodges are in view and adjacent to an ANOB with a footpath on the boundary, which we feel would be spoiling the enjoyment of walkers and people in the area. There's a lot of dog walkers and a lot of countryside pursuits, people walking and enjoying that area. There are badgers on the site of this land. We have concerns about the impact it has on them and of the wildlife in general with that amount of habitation. The access to these lodges is not viable, as it's intended that residents should use buggies parked some distance away in the main golf car park to transport shopping and for their daily needs. The buggies would cross over the narrow, quiet lane. It's designated quiet lane, and would be a hazard to motorists using the lane. And I think we need special consideration to the number of people residing in these lodges. The lodges house up to 6 persons in 3 double bedrooms for some of them. And also, it was mentioned that there is a bus stop in Raydon, but there is no bus service.
The change of use for the land where the lodges are to be sited, we're losing 3 golfing holes, and we're concerned that there are no real places to put those extra holes, but it was still stated that there's going to be an 18-hole golf course. Other parcels of land are for sale on the golf course, which begs the question, is this going to become eventually a holiday village? We're concerned about the increase of traffic on the narrow country lanes, also access of emergency vehicles, which might be necessary for the residents. On the lane in question, we have substantial flooding in 2 areas, and we're concerned that the increase of wastewater, etc., from the lodges could impact on this situation.
I think we'll stop you there. You've had a good 3 minutes. Thank you. Have we any questions for the speaker? No? Then thank you very much. An objector, Lorraine May. Sorry?
Sorry, I'm not objecting. I'm rejecting the application. If I could just explain, somebody was asking about Noakes Road and the houses and everything. Is that permissible for me? Above the drawing, there are actually quite a few properties, and it's not just those properties. The street that leads to Noakes Road is quite a heavily populated road.
All right. Thank you.
So the traffic that would come down there is, yeah.
Anyway, you have 3 minutes to address the committee, if you'd like
Thank
to
you.
start.
So yes, so that would be I'm obviously here representing the residents. I have grave concerns about the quiet lanes as well. They are very, very narrow country lanes. Even if you're down there walking, it's quite dangerous at times. The traffic that would come down the street into Raydon would just be horrendous. Trying to get down to Noakes Road, as I've said, there's an equestrian centre there. There are plenty of residents there living, you know, who like to use these lanes as recreational, which is why they're now designated quiet lanes. Our fear is that these lodges will be sold on. 2 are actually for sale at the moment, and in the for sale it does state they are 12-month occupancy, which beggars, you know, are they actually going to be holiday lets? I can only really just reiterate what our parish councillor has said, and really oppose this application.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are you willing to answer questions? Do we have questions? Anybody got any questions? No? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on. We have no supporter, we have no applicant, we have no agent. We do have 4 agents.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a complicated application to decide. On one side is the legitimate desire of a business to diversify and expand, and we do want to encourage expansion of our visitor economy. But on the other side, our planning policies, which are there to protect the countryside from inappropriate development, must be respected. The owners of the business are committed to developing a golf course that is sensitive to the environment, and it is a very pleasant facility. The staff are loyal, hardworking, and are clearly invested in the business's future. I do understand that the golf club sector is not as strong as it used to be, and that diversification is an inevitable consequence of this. But this development is a fundamentally different use that will adversely impact on the environment. It is a significant development, and there's a huge amount of local opposition because of the impact on the surrounding countryside. The opposition is not just from residents. Raydon and Holton parish councils have responded, as has the planning officer for the Dedham Vale National Landscape. Many residents have contacted me, and all have real worries about the impact of this proposal. These worries have been exacerbated by concerns about the future now that this site and 2 other sites on the golf course are up for sale. As with all applications, this must be assessed against planning policies, the NPPF and our own local policies. The application has taken a long time to get to committee, and during this time our joint local plan has been adopted. The design and access statement refers to, therefore, obsolete policies which have now been superseded by our new ones. However, irrespective of whether CS3 or SBO7 is the relevant tourism policy, they both qualify support for rural businesses with a statement where appropriate to the scale, character and nature of their locality. And these qualifying factors are addressed by other policies in the local plan. Policy SBO3, addressing the sustainable location of new development, is very clear that development outside of a settlement boundary will not be permitted unless it is in accordance with SBO7 and LP12, the tourism policies. The scale, impact on the countryside and lack of accessibility are contrary to these policies. And this is reinforced by LP13, which addresses tourism accommodation in the countryside, particularly paragraphs 1 and 3. It is a sensitive location, and although not within the Dedham Vale National Landscape, the golf course abuts it on two sides, including the location of the proposed lodges on the southwestern side of the course. Regard must therefore be paid to policy LP18, which addresses the safeguarding of the Dedham Vale. Because it is so close and due to its scale, the development will be a significant visible presence and it will have an unavoidable impact on dark skies and tranquility within the national landscape. Sully's Hill is a single-track quiet lane that cannot support much traffic. Because of its remoteness and quiet lane status, it is much used by walkers and horse riders, as is the adjacent public right-of-way leading into the national landscape. County Highways has removed its holding objection now that the applicant has agreed to additional passing places. However, this acknowledges that there will be extra traffic, and not just this lane. There will also be extra traffic from the A12 going along Sandpits Lane, Holt and St Mary, hence the additional passing place there. The extra traffic is not in keeping with the very rural location adjacent to the national landscape. Although the design and access statement says that the lodges will only be accessed via golf buggy, monitored by CCTV, with vehicles entering along the existing drive to the golf course car park from Noakes Road, which is also a quiet lane, this is unrealistic, and access points on Sully's Hill will likely be used by cars and larger vehicles. Moreover, despite what has been said and provided by consultees, there is no consideration for adequate access by emergency vehicles. These will require a considerable extension to the existing entrance, and they will use it. Anyone requiring emergency assistance will undoubtedly give the three words location to direct the responders to the lodges. In the absence of Shelley Parish meeting, the last word on traffic I know will come from them. They are concerned that an increase in traffic from the golf course to Hadley will use the Shelley route, which is also a single track lane and already becoming much busier because of congestion on Benton Street in Hadley. I do sympathise with the applicant's plight regarding the viability of the golf club, but whilst promoting the rural economy is supported by our planning policies, this is simply the wrong place for a large number of lodges. We cannot allow development in the open countryside along a quiet lane adjacent to a national landscape. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Any questions for Councillor Ward? No? Thank you. The item for debate. Councillor Holt, kick off.
Thank you, Chair. Having read the papers, listened to the officer and the speakers, I can only say and reiterate that we are open for business as the District Council, which does include tourism. However, this is not, in my opinion, a well thought out or complete planning application, and I agree with the planning officer proposed that we recommend, go along with the officer's recommendation, and that is one of refusal. I personally don't see prolonging this. I don't see debate is going to eradicate, in my opinion, the issues that I see with it, but I'd like to obviously get other members' opinions, but yeah, I would like to propose we accept the officer's recommendation.
So you're making a proposal? Yes. A proposal to approve? Yes? A recommendation? Have a seconder? Councillor Grandin? Do you want to speak now or hold? Anybody want to make any more comments? Councillor Wyman, go on.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, nothing other to concur with what Councillor Holt's already said, really. It was clearly, we're in business to attract tourism. vibrant economy, you know, make the district work. But there are so many questions associated with the occupancy of the existing structures along with the application itself. So, you know, I would go along with that and recommend refusal.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Register.
I would agree with Councillor Holt and Councillor Wyman. Having been to the site, I just looked at it and thought this is a park home site and they're just making it out as tourist. I thought some of the places looked semi-permanent to the extent that they had their own ornaments, and I nearly said garden gnomes, but I'm sure there were some. Yeah, I don't buy their business case. I think, yeah, it needs to be refused.
Thank you. Any more comments? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I've listened to Councillor Ward and the Parish Council and the objector. And am I correct in hearing that two of those properties are for sale that are supposed to be, well, in my opinion, they're not proposing to have holiday homes, are they? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make any comments? Councillor Grandin, you're going to conclude, or?
Well, if I may, thank you. I did go inside one of the holiday homes, and I thought they were very attractive accommodation, and we do need holiday accommodation. However, for me, one of the big problems is the scale of this application. And when you were on the site and also seeing the plans that we saw before us this morning, it almost felt like a small estate developing. And the balance of golf club versus a small housing estate came into play for me, as well as all the natural aspects of being in the countryside. It almost wouldn't be in the countryside anymore, especially if there are possibly some long-term holiday makers present. So I do feel that this is one that we have to go with the officer's decision to refuse, unfortunately, although I understand the economic problems of the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no more comments other than my own to say I agree with you all. And can I ask Claire to conduct the vote?
I'll just confirm the reasons for refusal, Chair, if I may.
If you will, because you're going to include a...
Yeah. Members, it's as per the committee report on pages 81 to 82, added to which is the item of biodiversity net gain, the lack of, which is on your table of paper, as per our policy LP16, and added to that any other reasons which the Chief Planning Officer considers expedient. And that's not just a blank canvas, we're just going to flesh out one or two of the other reasons, basically.
Okay.
Okay, members, that vote is now in progress. Just to remind you, a vote for is a vote for refusal, and against is a vote against refusal. So if you want to... Can yours not go through, Councillor? No, I'll take it verbally. Yep. For refusal. Okay, thank you. Chair, there are 8 members left, and that is 8 votes for refusal. Therefore, that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. The next meeting is scheduled for the 10th of January 2024. Yes, and we'll see you then. I hope everybody can stay for that one. I will now formally close the meeting.